engaged community leaders and young people in those distressed, underserved communities, many ignored communities. We heard from the young people there that we have to take this issue up. They insisted and demanded that if we wanted to be about the business of healthier communities, we had to respond in some way to this issue.
I want to start by walking you guys through a day in the life as a young man in South Central Los Angeles.
I am LA. I am the Bay. I am Long Beach. I am San Diego.
I'm one of many children of refugees in Long Beach. Growing up in a Cambodian refugee family hasn't been easy.
For gay, bisexual, and young men, and especially transgender students of color, the barriers to learning and success in school are often compounded and multiplied by the experiences of pervasive bullying and harassment and violence based on actual or perceived sexual orientation and gender identity.
Across the street to make my way to school, I see police cars parked out front with other police officers on foot and patrol cars roaming the surrounding area on the campus.
At Roosevelt, Garfield, and Wilson High School, only 24% of the students responded that enforcement of discipline policies helped change students' behavior.
I often found that the social isolation of being an openly gay and brown student were almost too much to bear.
We have a major problem, not only in East LA, but in the entire state.
And in my court, I would say, anecdotally, that 97% of the youth I see are youth of color. 70% are males.
California and its elected officials don't know how to support young men of color. One way we know this is because we have policies that are not about improving male behavior, but more about punishment.
70% of the students said that they did not feel they were treated fairly when they were suspended.
Here in Los Angeles and throughout our state, we believe we need a serious effort to reduce out-of-school suspensions, expulsions, school-based tickets, and arrests by 50%.
See 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds charged with misdemeanor crimes that are sent from the school to appear before me and to be placed on probation for conduct that has been criminalized that when I went to school was not a crime.
We finally break for lunch. In the yard, there are different groups of students hanging out, talking about sports, music, and what they're doing this weekend. In the same yard, there are usually 4 to 5 cops patrolling. They sometimes keep their hands on their guns, and that makes us really uncomfortable.
This is not only the aesthetic and the emotional reaction of what happens in school, this is actually the policy for what happens in school.
In my experience, I showed up late to school one day, and the school gave me a tardy ticket. Along with a group of other students, they sent me to on-campus suspension, or OCS.
When they show that they have behavior problems, you can see how it leads to prison.
Bell rings and security guards are telling us to hurry up and rush back to our under-resourced classes with our overwhelmed teachers and our standardized curriculum.
LA Juvenile and Formal Traffic Court processes over 120,000 citations a year, ranging from minor infractions to misdemeanors.
We're made to feel like criminals. Our schools look and feel like jails.
Truancy Center was almost like a jail. There was a lot of racial tension in the room.
The county has the largest juvenile court in the country, if not in the world. LAUSD is the second largest district in the country, and LA is also the home of the largest school police department in the country.
This experience in mind, ask yourself, how can we truly be expected to achieve at a high academic level when we are experiencing conditions that are more like a prison and less like a school?
When I did return, I was kicked out without getting to the root cause of why a student that had met all graduation requirements and passed both parts of the case, he was pushed out of education and into incarceration.
Why is the student failing? Why is the student not coming to school? Not just, hey, we don't want you here anymore. Go to prison. Get chained to the system.
We need to work harder on getting the schools to be the center of treatment, not the court.
We have policies that are not about forgiveness. We have policies that are not about understanding. We have policies that are not about patience. And we have policies that are not about restorative justice, making sure that young men of color are restored back into society when they commit an error.
Despite the multi-billion-dollar war on gangs, which has undeniably been a war on youth of color, LA, by law enforcement's own admission, has twice as many alleged gang members and 6 times as many alleged gangs as when the war was declared 4 decades ago.
We saw the violence in the streets as a game, and when you're young, you don't really notice these issues until they hit you right in the chest.
I was arrested and charged with sales. Now, mind you, that I've never been to a juvenile hall, camp, or a detention center. I was 18, and instead of walking stage receiving a diploma, I was walking across the Los Angeles County Jail Inmate Reception Center receiving a booking number.
Before I went to jail, I was informed that I was then placed on a list on my school that I was listed as a person who was involved in gangs within my school campus.
The gang injunction and the gang database, which in my experience does not bring safety in the community and creates a lot more tension between other communities. The gang database only reinforces racial profiling, which has targeted, criminalized, and has incarcerated young boys and males of color. Black and Latinos make 59% of the Los Angeles population, and yet 98% of the people who make up the gang database are Black and Latino.
That was something I did not know. It was something I had to deal with not only within my community, but also had to tell my mother. It was something that I faced when I went to the courtroom and I had to sit in front of a judge and a public defender who looked at me as a gang member, in which I am not.
The worst part of the gang database is that you are not notified that you've been inputted, and it's a completely biased tool.
It took my mother, 3 of my mentors, and some of the strongest documentation of the work I've done in my community and will continue to do in my community to prove to the judge and the public defender that I am not a gang member, that I am not affiliated. That process took over a year.
Occurred in 2009 when I became a part of that 90%. Fortunately, I refused to accept the justice system plan to make me a permanent member of the prison industrial complex. Because the system does not provide alternative sentencing programs,
We have as many probation camps as community colleges. 1 in 10 Black and brown male youth in South Central Los Angeles, where you are sitting, go to college. Less than 1 in 100 will graduate with a 4-year degree, but 1 in 3 are incarcerated. Despite the fact that LA represents only 27% of the state's population, we contribute 40% of the state's prison population, including thousands of youth who have been sentenced to die in prison with either life without parole or life sentences so long that they will not live to see their first parole hearing.
African American and Hispanics make up 90% of inmates sentenced to California state prisons for drug possessions, which are classified as a nonviolent crime.
$252,312. Write that down. Because that is the cost that we pay in the state of California to incarcerate one youth for 1 year.
The price, not nice. I gotta pay up with problems, struggle, and sorrow. My biggest fear is that I won't see tomorrow. My life is borrowed. Any minute, any day, my name can be mentioned, and I shall be directed to the next dimension.
I'm only one person. Now, can you imagine this process repeating itself thousands and thousands of times amongst our boys and men of color?
When we see the boys and men of color in our communities not having the same opportunities or being unfairly incarcerated, it really impacts what other people think, but at the same time promotes or fuels new movements to change all of this.
I am beautiful, I am strong, I am intelligent, and I'm asking you to hold on.
The money is there. We have one thing that we ask. You know the need is there. You know the solutions are there. We've shared them today. We just shared that the funding is definitely there if we allocate it the proper way. So the only thing that we truly need is expeditious action to carry out the solutions so that we can move forward and truly do something great.
We all have the power to change the system, and all the students have the power to change their future.
All of California's prosperity rests on the actions we take from this day forward.